I spent $400 on plants last spring, and by August, almost every single one of them was dead. Not struggling, not yellowing, dead. And the worst part was not the money, it was the walk past the garden beds every morning, the guilt, the quiet little voice saying, maybe you are just not a garden person. That voice was wrong, and here is what it got wrong. The problem was never me, it was the plants. Because there is a category of plant that does not care if you forget to water, does not care if your soil is bad, does not care if life gets busy for 3 weeks straight. They are called perennials, and today I'm giving you 15 of the best ones that exist, including one that I have genuinely never seen die. Plant number 1 is hostas, and if you have a shady corner of your yard that has been silently defeating you for years, this is the plant that ends that problem for good. Hostas are grown almost entirely for their foliage, and that foliage is extraordinary. We are talking leaves that come in deep forest green, cool blue-green, bright golden chartreuse, and stunning combinations of white and green that look like someone hand-painted them. Some varieties grow to just 6 inches across and tuck neatly into tight spaces. Others spread to 4 feet wide and become the undeniable centerpiece of an entire bed. The reason hostas belong on this list is simple. They are built for shade, which means they thrive in the exact spots where most other plants give up entirely. Once they settle in, they become surprisingly drought-tolerant, and they come back every single year a little bigger and more dramatic than the year before. The entire care requirement is essentially nothing. Hostas are hardy in zones 3 through 9, which covers the overwhelming majority of North American gardens. If you have a shaded spot that feels like a problem, plant hostas and watch it become the part of your yard you are most proud of. Plant number 2 is Black-Eyed Susan, and I am going to be direct with you. This plant is nearly impossible to kill. I genuinely mean that. Black-Eyed Susans are those classic, cheerful flowers you have probably seen growing wild along roadsides and in meadows, bright yellow petals surrounding a bold, dark center, and there is a very good reason they grow wild. They are native to North America, which means they evolved over thousands of years to survive in this environment, without any help from anyone. They are drought-tolerant, they self-seed naturally, so they give you more plants every year for free. They attract butterflies and bees in impressive numbers, and they bloom from midsummer all the way through fall, giving you months of vivid color. You can deadhead them if you want more blooms, or you can leave them completely alone and they will still perform beautifully. Black-Eyed Susans are hardy in zones 3 through 9 and are one of the most forgiving, most adaptable perennials available to any gardener at any skill level. Plant number 3 is coneflower, known botanically as echinacea, and if you have never grown this one, you have been missing out on something genuinely special. These are tall, daisy-like flowers available in purple, pink, white, orange, and yellow, and they manage to look both wild and intentional at the same time. They handle heat without complaint. They handle drought without drama. They grow in poor soil that would defeat most other plants, and they attract pollinators steadily across their long blooming season. Here is the detail that separates coneflowers from almost everything else on this list. If you leave the seed heads standing in fall instead of cutting them back, songbirds feed on those seeds all through winter, which means your garden stays alive and purposeful even in the coldest months. The maintenance options are completely flexible. Deadhead for more blooms, or leave them alone entirely and let nature run the show. Either way, your garden looks intentional, alive, and like you know exactly what you are doing. Coneflowers are hardy in zones 3 through 9. Plant number 4 is daylilies, and before you think you already know everything about this plant, consider this. There are over 80,000 registered cultivars of daylilies. Hot oranges, soft creamy yellows, rich burgundies, deep reds, delicate pinks, dramatic colors. There is a daylily for every aesthetic, every color scheme, and every garden style imaginable. And the ease of growing them is almost unfair. Full sun or part shade, clay soil, sandy soil, slopes, flat beds, containers. Daylilies simply do not care about conditions. They grow in dense clumps that naturally crowd out weeds before weeds have a chance to establish. They spread slowly on their own, and every 3 to 5 years you can divide the clumps and plant the divisions elsewhere in your yard, which means you are essentially growing new plants for free every few years. One important note that belongs here because it matters. Daylilies are toxic to cats, not to dogs or most other animals, but specifically to cats. If you have outdoor cats, plant these with that awareness. Daylilies are hardy in zones 3 through 9, with some newer varieties extending into zone 10. Plant number 5 is lavender, and this one operates by a rule that runs completely opposite to most gardening advice you have ever heard. Lavender actually performs better when you leave it alone. It wants poor soil, lean soil, soil that has not been heavily amended or fertilized. It does not want wet feet. It does not want extra nutrients. Overwatering is genuinely the most reliable way to kill it, which means if you are the type of person who tends to forget about your garden for stretches of time, lavender was practically designed for your lifestyle. It blooms in those iconic fragrant purple spikes that are beautiful, long-lasting, and instantly recognizable. It acts as a natural insect repellent, so planting it near a patio or seating area measurably reduces mosquitoes in that space. The dried flowers are useful in cooking, in teas, and in sachets. In mild climates, it stays evergreen through winter, giving your garden structure and presence year-round, not just during blooming season. The less you fuss over lavender, the better it does. Lavender is best suited to zones 5 through 9 for most common varieties. English lavender, specifically Lavandula angustifolia, is the hardiest and will survive zone 5 winters with good drainage. If you are in zone 4 or colder, treat it as an annual or grow it in a container you can bring inside when temperatures drop. Plant number 6 is a stilbe, and this is one of the most underrated plants on this entire list. Most flowering plants struggle in shade. A stilbe absolutely thrives there. Under mature trees, in north-facing beds, in spots that never see more than a few hours of direct sun, a stilbe produces feathery plume-like flower stalks that honestly look like fireworks frozen in slow motion. Pinks, reds, whites, purples, lavenders, the color range is genuinely gorgeous. Plant different varieties with staggered bloom times, and you can have color in a shaded bed for months. One honest note about a stilbe: it does appreciate consistent moisture and is not the drought lover that several other plants on this list are. Beyond regular watering, however, it asks almost nothing of you. You plant it, you water it reasonably, and it rewards you with spectacular blooms that grow more impressive every season. A stilbe is hardy in zones 3 through 8 and is particularly excellent in the Pacific Northwest, Upper Midwest, and Northeast. Plant number 7 is sedum, also called stonecrop, and I told you earlier there was a plant on this list I have never personally seen die. This is that plant, which means it stores water directly in its thick, fleshy leaves. Rocky soil, sandy soil, full blazing sun all day, forgotten for an entire month in midsummer drought. Sedum does not care, it just keeps going. The most famous upright variety is Autumn Joy, and it is almost theatrical in its seasonal performance. It opens with pale pink flower buds in late summer, deepens to rich rose as it peaks, then transitions to a warm rust bronze by fall that holds its structure well into winter, giving you visual interest and texture long after everything else in the garden has died back. If you have a difficult, hot, dry, sunny spot where nothing seems to want to grow, sedum is the answer. Sedum is hardy in zones 3 through 9, with some low-growing creeping varieties, surviving all the way into zone 2. Plant number 8 is Perennials salvia, and a specific note matters here because it makes a real difference. There are annual salvias and perennial salvias, and we want the perennial kind. The one to look for is Salvia nemorosa. These are compact, upright plants covered in rich violet, blue, or purple flower spikes that bloom heavily in late spring and early summer. Cut them back after that first flush of blooms, and they very often rebloom in late summer, which means you get 2 rounds of flowers for the effort of 1 pruning. Butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds are genuinely drawn to perennial salvia, while deer and rabbits tend to leave them alone entirely because of the strong aromatic oils in the foliage. They handle heat, they handle drought, and the only thing that reliably causes them trouble is overwatering or poorly drained soil. Give them full sun and decent drainage, and they will perform beautifully for years. Perennial salvia is hardy in zones 4 through 9. Plant number 9 is Russian sage, and this is the one that makes people stop at your garden and ask what it is every single time. Russian sage, botanical name Perovskia, sends up tall, airy silver-white stems covered in tiny lavender blue flowers from midsummer all the way through fall. The whole plant has a misty, cloud-like quality that moves in the breeze and catches light in a way that makes everything planted near it look more beautiful by contrast. And the care requirements are almost laughably simple. Full sun, poor to average soil, excellent drainage, and then essentially nothing else. It is extremely drought tolerant once established. It is deer-resistant. It handles heat and wind and genuine neglect with something that looks almost like enthusiasm. Heavy fertilizing actually makes it floppy and destroys the natural elegance that makes it so striking. It wants to grow a little wild, a little tough, and in return it gives you 3 to 4 months of breathtaking color and texture. Russian sage is hardy in zones 4 through 9 and is exceptional in the hot, dry regions of the West and Midwest. Plant number 10 is catmint, or nepeta, and if you want continuous season-long color with almost no work whatsoever, stop here because this is exactly what you have been looking for. Catmint forms beautiful, soft mounds covered in clouds of small lavender-blue flowers. It blooms heavily in spring, and if you cut it back by about a third after that first flush, it returns and blooms again in late summer. It handles full sun and partial shade with equal ease. It grows in poor soil. It is drought-tolerant once established, and it does not need fertilizing. It works perfectly as an edging plant along paths and borders, softening hard edges with its relaxed, flowing habit, and it attracts bees and butterflies from the first bloom to the last. One fair warning: cats may roll in it with considerable enthusiasm. This is not a problem that needs solving, and it is honestly entertaining to watch. Catmint is hardy in zones 3 through 8. Plant number 11 is yarrow, and the toughness of this plant is borderline legendary for a very straightforward reason. Yarrow started as a wildflower, and that tells you almost everything you need to know. Flat-topped clusters of tiny flowers in reds, yellows, pinks, creams, and whites sit above feathery, fern-like foliage for a look that is naturally cottage garden and effortlessly relaxed. Yarrow tolerates drought, poor soil, heat, and very low soil fertility without complaint. It self-seeds and spreads gradually, filling in gaps in your garden on its own. The cut flowers dry beautifully and hold their color for months, making them excellent for indoor arrangements that last long after fresh flowers would have faded. One practical note: in very rich, fertile soil, yarrow can spread more aggressively than you want. If your beds are heavily amended, give it a leaner spot and it will behave beautifully. Yarrow is hardy in zones 3 through 9 and is one of the best choices for challenging northern climates. Plant number 12 is coreopsis, also called tickseed, and the best single description of it is this: it is pure sunshine in plant form. Coreopsis produces bright, button-like flowers, primarily in cheerful yellow with pink, orange, and bicolor varieties available, and it blooms for an extraordinarily long season. Some varieties start in late spring and do not stop until frost arrives in fall. It is extremely heat and drought tolerant. It prefers lean soil, and over-fertilizing actually reduces the number of flowers it produces. Many modern varieties are self-cleaning, meaning the old spent flowers drop on their own without any deadheading required from you. Non-stop color, season after season, with almost nothing asked of you in return. Coreopsis is hardy in zones 3 through 9 and is one of the best perennials for hot, sunny gardens across the South and Midwest. Plant number 13 is liriope, also called lily turf, and this is the plant that solves one of the most frustrating garden problems that exists. It looks like a grass but is actually a flowering perennial, with dark, strappy, arching leaves that stay attractive all season and spikes of small purple or white flowers in late summer. The real reason to grow liriope, though, is what it does as a ground cover. It handles deep shade beautifully. It handles full sun. It tolerates drought, compacted soil, and slopes where almost nothing else will survive. Once established, it forms a dense enough mat to crowd out most weeds entirely. It holds soil on hillsides and prevents erosion. In mild climates, it stays evergreen through winter. For those dry, root-choked spots under large mature trees where the soil is compacted and nearly nothing will grow, liriope handles it without drama. It may not be the flashiest plant on today's list, but it might be the most genuinely useful one. Liriope is hardy in zones 5 through 10. Plant number 14 is creeping phlox, and this one delivers more visual drama for less effort than almost any other plant I know. In spring, creeping phlox produces such a thick, dense carpet of small flowers in hot pink, magenta, purple, white, and lavender that the foliage nearly disappears entirely beneath them. It cascades over rocks, tumbles over retaining walls, and floods slopes and hillsides with color in a way that looks like you spent serious money and serious time to achieve it. After it blooms, it becomes a neat, tidy, evergreen mat of fine foliage that holds its color year-round, keeps soil in place on slopes, and crowds out weeds for the rest of the season. For rock gardens, slopes, hillsides, between stepping stones, or plant it along the top of a wall where it can spill dramatically over the edge. This plant looks intentional, designed, and expensive. The entire maintenance requirement is a light trim after it finishes blooming to keep it compact. That is the whole job description. Creeping phlox is hardy in zones 3 through 9. Plant number 15 is Carl Foster feather reed grass, and I saved this one for last on purpose because I want it to be the one you walk away remembering. Carl Foster grows 4 to 6 feet tall in a neat, upright, tidy clump that does not flop, does not sprawl, and does not spread aggressively. In late spring, it sends up feathery green plumes that catch the light beautifully. By midsummer, those plumes mature to warm gold. By fall, the entire plant transitions to a rich bronze gold that glows in the low autumn light, and in winter it stands. It holds its structure through cold, through snow, through wind, and it sways and catches the light on a clear winter day in a way that is genuinely beautiful. This is a true 4-season plant. Most perennials give you a few weeks of bloom and then become background. Carl Foster is interesting and beautiful in every single month of the year. It is drought tolerant once established. It handles heat. It does not need fertilizing, and it does not require staking or support. The entire annual maintenance task is one hard cutback in late winter or early spring, cutting it down to about 4 to 6 inches from the ground before new growth emerges. One haircut per year. That is the whole deal. If you want height, movement, texture, the quiet, calming sound of grass in the wind, and 4-season interest all from a single plant, Carl Foster is the most efficient way to get all of it at once. It is hardy in zones 4 through 9. Here is how to think about these 15 plants in terms of where you actually need them. For shady spots, hostas, astilbe, and liriope will completely transform any dark, difficult corner of your yard. For hot, dry, sunny spots, black-eyed Susan, sedum, yarrow, coreopsis, and Russian sage will thrive in conditions that would stress or kill most other plants. For edges and ground cover, creeping phlox, catmint, and liriope will crowd out weeds and look beautiful doing it. For color, fragrance, and pollinators, lavender, coneflower, salvia, and daylilies will bring bees and butterflies and hummingbirds into your garden consistently. For structure and year-round drama, Russian sage and Carl Foster grass are the plants that make your whole garden look like it was professionally designed. One more practical note before you go. Most of these plants are available at any garden center or home improvement store in spring. Buy young plants rather than seeds to give yourself the best start. And plant in early spring or fall when temperatures are cooler and roots have time to establish before summer stress arrives. Prepare your soil minimally, loosen it, ensure it drains well, and get the plants in the ground. The most important step is simply beginning. You do not need a green thumb. You do not need hours of free weekend time. You do not need to know everything about gardening before you start. You just need to begin with the right plants. Pick 3 from this list, just 3. Plant them this season and watch what happens. Because once you see how little these plants actually need from you and how much beauty they bring back in return, you are going to wonder why you waited as long as you did. There is nothing quite like walking outside on a summer morning, coffee in hand, looking at a garden full of color and life, and knowing you made that happen and that it was easier than you ever expected.